I'm used to it, she said, looking down at her empty bowl. After dinner, Sophia insisted on doing the dishes. It was the least she could do. As she stood at the sink, she could feel Grayson watching her from where he sat at the table, going through some farm paperwork. What? She asked, turning to find his gray eyes studying her. Just trying to figure you out, he admitted. Most people don't give up everything to help animals. I didn't give up much, Sophia replied honestly. And I got freedom in return. No roots means no heartbreak when those roots get torn up. The words hung between them, revealing more than she'd intended. Again. The spare room has extra blankets in the closet if you get cold, Grayson said, standing up. I'm up at 5 for chores, but sleep as long as you need. I'll be up too, Sophia insisted. I can help around the farm while we wait for the mechanic. It's the least I can do. Grayson looked like he wanted to argue but then nodded. Good night, Sophia. Good night, Grayson. And thank you. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Sophia listened to the rain drumming on the roof. Mateo was curled up beside her, his warm weight comforting against her side. Down the hall, she could hear Grayson moving around in his own room. It felt strange being under someone else's roof, accepting someone else's kindness. Sophia had learned early in life not to depend on others. They usually disappointed you, but there was something about Grayson Hale that made her want to trust him. Just for a day or two. She whispered to Mateo, stroking his fur. Be back on the road. But even as she said it, a small part of her wondered what it would be like to stay in one place, to wake up in the same bed every morning, to have someone like Grayson to talk to over dinner. Sophia pushed the thought away. She had her animals to think about. Her mission, getting attached to people or places, only led to pain. Still, as she drifted off to sleep, the sound of the rain on the roof and the knowledge that Grayson was just down the hall gave her a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Morning came with golden light streaming through the curtains. Sophia woke with a start, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then she remembered the broken-down van, Grayson's farm, the spare bedroom. She checked her watch. 5:30 a.m., she'd overslept already. Quickly, she dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, pulled her hair into a ponytail, and hurried downstairs with Mateo at her heels. The kitchen was empty, but a pot of fresh coffee sat on the counter with a clean mug beside it. A note leaned against the pot. Gone to milk the cows. Help yourself. Sophia smiled at the simple kindness, poured herself a cup, and headed out to the barn to check on her animals. Inside, she found Grayson already there. He was sitting cross-legged on the hay, gently holding one of the baby squirrels and feeding it with a tiny dropper. Morning, he said, not looking up from his task. Hope you slept well. Sophia stopped in her tracks, oddly moved by the sight of this large, strong man tenderly caring for such a tiny creature. I did, she said, kneeling down beside him. Sorry I wasn't up earlier to feed them. You needed the rest, Grayson replied simply. Besides, it's been a while since I've fed anything this small. Nice to know I haven't lost a touch. He finished feeding the squirrel and carefully returned it to its box with its siblings. Only then did he look up at Sophia, and the warmth in his gray eyes made her breath catch. What? He asked. Sophia shook her head. Nothing, just, not many people would know how to feed a baby squirrel. Grayson stood up, brushing hay from his jeans. Grew up on a farm. You learn to take care of all kinds of creatures. He checked his watch. Mike from the garage said he'd be here around 10. That gives us time to finish the morning chores if you're still offering to help. Absolutely, Sophia said, getting to her feet. Put me to work. The next few hours flew by as Sophia followed Grayson around the farm. They collected eggs from the hen house, fed the 2 horses in the paddock, and checked on a pregnant cow in the field. Grayson was patient, explaining things without making Sophia feel stupid when she didn't know something. By the time they returned to the house for breakfast, Sophia's cheeks were flushed from exertion and the morning sun. For the first time in months, she wasn't thinking about her next destination or worrying about money for gas and animal food. She was simply present, enjoying the rhythm of farm life. Over breakfast omelets made with fresh eggs and vegetables from Grayson's garden. Sophia found herself telling Grayson about some of her adventures on the road. The time she'd rescued a hawk with a broken wing from the middle of a highway. The litter of kittens she'd found in a dumpster behind a restaurant. You really do have a gift, Grayson said when she finished a story about coaxing a terrified dugout from under an abandoned house. Most people wouldn't have the patience. Sophia felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. It's not patience, really. I just see them. How scared they are. How much they want to trust but can't quite bring if themselves to do it. She looked down at her plate. I know how that feels. Grayson was quiet for a moment. Then he said, 2 years ago, a flood wiped out half my crops. Insurance barely covered the replanting. I almost lost the farm. Sophia looked up, surprised by the personal admission. What I'm saying, Grayson continued, is that I know what it's like to build something and watch it wash away. Makes you wonder if it's worth trying again. Their eyes met across the table, and Sophia felt a connection she hadn't expected, a recognition of shared wounds. Different but equally deep. The moment was broken by the sound of a truck pulling up outside. That'll be Mike, Grayson said. Standing up. Mike turned out to be a burly man in his 50s with grease-stained hands and a booming laugh. He examined Sophia's van with a frown, poking and prodding under the hood. Transmission shot, he finally declared, and the radiators cracked. I can fix it, but it'll take time to get the parts. Week, maybe more. Sophia's heart sank. A week. She couldn't impose on Grayson that long, and the repairs would cost money she didn't have. How much? He asked, dreading the answer. Mike named a figure that made Sophia's stomach drop. It was almost all the money she had. I can pay in installments, she offered weakly. Mike exchanged a look with Grayson. Tell you what, he said. I've got a shelter dog that needs some training. Trade you part of the repair cost for some of your animal expertise. Before Sophia could respond, Grayson added, and you can stay here while you wait for the repairs. I could use the help around the farm. Sophia looked between the two men, suspecting they'd planned this. I can't accept charity, she said firmly. It's not charity if you're working, Grayson pointed out. The summer harvest is coming, and I'm short-handed. You'd be doing me a favor. Sophia wanted to argue, but the practical part of her knew she had few options. She needed her van fixed, and she needed a place to stay in the meantime. 1 week. She finally agreed. Mike grinned. I'll get those parts ordered today, he said, climbing back into his truck, and I'll bring that dog by tomorrow. As Mike's truck disappeared down the driveway, Sophia turned to Grayson. You didn't have to do that. Grayson shrugged. Everyone needs help sometimes, Sophia, even you. That afternoon, as Sophia helped Grayson in the vegetable garden, she kept stealing glances at him. There was something about the careful way he handled the plants, the quiet confidence in his movements, that drew her attention. When a sudden summer shower sent them running for the cover of the porch, they stood side by side, watching the rain turn the dust to mud. I meant what I said about needing help, Grayson told her. It's not just about giving you a place to stay. Sophia looked up at him, rain dripping from the porch roof between them. Why are you being so kind to me? You don't even know me. Grayson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, when my brother died, I was angry at the world, pushed everyone away. Then one day, an old farmer from the next property over showed up with a casserole and wouldn't take no for an answer. Just sat at my table until I ate. He smiled at the memory. Sometimes a little kindness from a stranger is exactly what you need. Sophia felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Well, thank you for everything. As they stood there, watching the rainfall on the fields, Sophia realized with a start that, for the first time in years, she wasn't planning her next escape. Instead, she was thinking about tomorrow on this farm, with this man who seemed to see past her defenses with those storm-gray eyes. 1 week, she reminded herself. Just 1 week, and then back to the road. But standing beside Grayson in the gentle rain, Sophia couldn't help but wonder if, just maybe, her restless heart had finally found a place it might want to stay. Days at Sunfield Acres fell into a rhythm that surprised Sophia with how comfortable it felt. Each morning she woke at dawn and joined Grayson for the farm chores. They worked side by side in companionable silence, feeding animals and tending to crops as the sun rose over the golden fields. By the third day, Sophia knew the routine by heart. She knew that Grayson liked his coffee black but added honey to his oatmeal. She knew that he talked to his cows while he milked them, quiet conversations that made her smile when she overheard them. And she knew that despite his calm exterior, there was a sadness in him that appeared when he thought no one was looking. In turn, Grayson seemed to be learning her habits too. He noticed that she always checked on her rescued animals first thing in the morning, whispering good mornings to each one. He saw how she saved bits of her breakfast for Mateo, slipping them to the 3-legged dog when she thought Grayson wasn't. Watching, he observed the way she rubbed her left wrist when she was anxious, a habit she wasn't even aware of herself. Old injury? He asked one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching fireflies dance over the fields. Sophia looked down, surprised to find herself massaging her wrist again. Foster home when I was 12. she said simply. The father had a temper. Grayson's jaw tightened, but he didn't press for details. Instead, he stood up and disappeared into the house, returning a moment later with a small jar. Arnica salve, he explained, holding it out to her. My mother used to make it, good for old aches. Sophia took the jar, touched by the gesture. Thank you. As Grayson sat back down beside her, their shoulders almost touching, she felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with her old injury. True to his word, Mike from the garage had brought over a dog the next day, a nervous German shepherd named Duke who cowered at sudden movements and barked at shadows. Previous owner was a real piece of work, Mike had explained, shaking his head. Kept him chained up, hardly fed him. Neighbor finally reported it. Shelter's full, and they were talking about putting him down because of his behavior issues. Now, a week into her stay, Sophia sat in the middle of the barn working with Duke. The dog was keeping his distance, watching her suspiciously from behind a hay bale. It's okay, Sophia called softly, holding out a treat in her open palm. No one's going to hurt you here. Duke's ears perked up at the sound of her voice, but he stayed put. Sophia settled in to wait. Patience was key with traumatized animals. She didn't notice Grayson watching from the doorway until he spoke. He's coming around, Grayson observed quietly, careful not to startle the dog. Yesterday he wouldn't even stay in the same section of the barn as you. Sophia smiled without taking her eyes off Duke. He just needs time to learn to trust again, don't we all? Grayson came and sat beside her on the hay, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. Mike called this morning. He said, parts for your van are delayed. Might be another week. Sophia felt a twinge of anxiety, followed immediately by a surprising sense of relief. Another week at Sunfield Acres. Another week with Grayson. I can find somewhere else to stay, she offered, not meaning it. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing, Grayson said firmly. The farm hasn't run this smoothly in years. Those tomatoes you planted are already sprouting, and Bessie's milk production is up since you started playing that classical music in the barn. Sophia laughed. Cows appreciate Mozart, who knew? Grayson's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, really smiled. Not the polite half-smile he gave to Mike or the delivery man who brought supplies. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. Besides, he added, your animals are settled and moving them would just stress them out. As if on cue, one of the rescued cats, a calico Sophia had named Patcha, sauntered over and rubbed against Grayson's leg. He reached down to scratch behind her ears, and the cat purred loudly. Traitor, Sophia teased the cat. I'm the one who saved you from that drainage ditch, and now you're all about Grayson. She knows quality when she sees it, Grayson replied, with a wink that made Sophia's cheeks warm. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Duke inch closer to the treat Sophia still held out. Finally, the German shepherd darted forward, snatched the treat, and retreated to his safe spot. Victory, Sophia whispered, a smile spreading across her face. You really do have a gift, Grayson said, his voice low and sincere, the way you see past their fear to who they really are. Sophia looked up, meeting his gaze. There was something in his eyes that made her breath catch a warmth, an admiration that she wasn't used to seeing directed at her. It's not that hard, she said, looking away first. Animals are simple. They just want safety and kindness. People are the complicated ones. Before Grayson could respond, the sound of a car engine interrupted them. They both stood and walked to the barn door to see a sleek red convertible pulling up the driveway. Expecting company? Sophia asked, suddenly conscious of her dirty jeans and messy hair. Grayson frowned. No. A woman stepped out of the car, and Sophia immediately felt underdressed. The newcomer wore white pants that somehow looked spotless despite the dusty driveway, a silky blue top, and designer sunglasses. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, and diamond studs glittered in her ears. Grayson, the woman called, waving as she walked toward them, surprised. Grayson stiffened beside Sophia. Rebecca, he said, his voice carefully neutral. This is unexpected. The woman Rebecca reached them and leaned in to kiss Grayson's cheek. Sophia noticed he didn't return the gesture. Dad told me you were all alone out here for the summer, so I thought I'd drop by, Rebecca explained, then turned her attention to Sophia. And you must be ... The help. Sophia felt her spine straighten. She'd been called worse, but something about this woman's dismissive tone rankled. Sophia Delgado, she said, extending her hand. Friend of Grayson's. Rebecca's perfectly manicured hand briefly touched Sophia's before withdrawing. Rebecca Winters. Grayson and I go way back. She turned back to Grayson. Got room for one more house guest. I'm in town for the weekend. Sophia glanced at Grayson, whose expression had closed off in a way she hadn't seen before. You should have called Rebecca, he said. I'm pretty busy with the farm right now. Rebecca pouted prettily. Too busy for an old friend. We have so much catching up to do. She linked her arm through his. Show me what you've done with the place since I was last here. It's been too long. Sophia stepped back, feeling suddenly like an intruder. I should check on the animals, she murmured, not waiting for a response before retreating into the barn. Inside, she busied herself with feeding and cleaning, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. Of course, Grayson had a woman like Rebecca in his life, beautiful, put together, probably from a good family. not someone who lived out of a van with a menagerie of rescued strays. Sophia had just finished feeding the baby squirrels when Grayson appeared in the doorway alone. "Rebecca's settling into the guest room," he said, sounding tired. "I put her in the one at the end of the hall. You're keeping yours?" Sophia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "She's not," Grayson started, then stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture Sophia had learned meant he was uncomfortable. "Rebecca's father and mine were business partners. We grew up together, dated in high school. You don't owe me an explanation," Sophia said quickly, focusing on cleaning the feeding dropper. "I know I don't," Grayson replied. "I just wanted you to know." Something in his tone made Sophia look up. Grayson was watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Know what?" she asked softly. Before he could answer, Rebecca's voice called from outside the barn. "Grayson, where did you disappear to? I was thinking we could drive into town for dinner." The moment broke. Grayson sighed. "I should go deal with this. Will you be okay?" Sophia forced a smile. "Of course. Go have dinner with your friend. I'll hold down the fort." After they left, the farmhouse felt strangely empty. Sophia fed herself a simple dinner and spent the evening in the barn with her animals. Duke had made progress, allowing her to sit within a few feet of him while he ate. "See," she told the German shepherd. "Not so scary after all." As darkness fell, Sophia reluctantly headed back to the house. She could hear Rebecca's laughter from the living room as she slipped upstairs to her bedroom. Mateo followed her, settling on the bed as she changed into her pajamas. "Just a reminder," she whispered to the dog, stroking his head. "This isn't our home, boy. We're just passing through." But as she lay in bed, listening to the distant murmur of voices downstairs, Sophia couldn't ignore the ache in her chest. Somehow, in just over a week, this farm and the man who owned it had started to feel like somewhere she could belong, and that terrified her. The next morning, Sophia woke early as usual. She dressed quietly and slipped downstairs, expecting to be the first one up. To her surprise, Rebecca was already in the kitchen, wearing silk pajamas and brewing coffee. "Morning," Sophia said, stopping awkwardly in the doorway. Rebecca turned, cup in hand. "Oh, good morning. Early riser too, huh?" Sophia nodded, moving to get her own mug. "Farm schedule. Grayson was always an early bird," Rebecca said, leaning against the counter. "Even in high school, he'd be up at dawn to check on his 4-H projects before class." Sophia didn't know how to respond to that glimpse into a Grayson she didn't know, so she just nodded again and poured her coffee. "You two seem close," Rebecca observed, watching Sophia over the rim of her cup. Sophia focused on adding sugar to her coffee. "Grayson's been kind enough to let me stay while my van gets fixed. I help out around the farm in exchange." Rebecca murmured, a knowing look in her eye that made Sophia uncomfortable. Grayson's always had a soft spot for strays. Before Sophia could respond to the thinly veiled insult, Grayson himself appeared in the doorway. He was already dressed for farm work, and his eyes immediately found Sophia's. "Morning," he said, and the warmth in his voice when he addressed her was unmistakable. "Coffee's ready," Rebecca announced, holding out a mug for him. "Just how you like it." Grayson accepted the cup with a nod of thanks, but his eyes stayed on Sophia, ready for chores. Sophia nodded, grateful for the excuse to escape the kitchen. "I'll just check on the animals first." Outside, the morning air was cool and fresh after a night of light rain. Sophia took a deep breath, trying to clear her head as she walked to the barn. She shouldn't be feeling this way, jealous, possessive of a man she'd known for barely 2 weeks, a man who had a life, connections, and history she knew nothing about, in the barn. She found Duke waiting by the door of his makeshift pen. When he saw her, his tail wagged hesitantly. "Well, look at you," Sophia said, smiling despite her troubled thoughts. "Someone's feeling braver today." She opened the pen, and to her surprise, Duke walked right up to her. He was still cautious, ears alert for any alarming sounds, but he allowed her to stroke his head. "Good boy," she whispered, crouching to his level. "You're doing so well. Looks like you've made a breakthrough." Sophia looked up to find Grayson standing in the barn doorway, watching them with a smile. "He just needed time," she said, standing up. "And consistency, knowing that the same person would show up every day, treat him the same way. Consistency is important," Grayson agreed, coming to stand beside her. "Rebecca's gone into town for breakfast with some old school friends. She'll be out most of the day." Sophia tried not to show her relief. "That's nice." Grayson studied her face. "You don't like her?" "I don't know her," Sophia corrected. "And it doesn't matter if I like her or not. She's your friend, not mine." "She can be ... a lot," Grayson admitted. "We grew up together, and our parents always hoped we'd end up together, but that's not going to happen." Sophia busied herself with checking the water bowls for her rescued cats. "Like I said, it's none of my business." Grayson stepped closer. "What if I want it to be your business?" Sophia froze, her heart pounding. Slowly, she turned to face him. "What do you mean?" Grayson was close enough now that she could see the different shades of gray in his eyes. The stubble on his jaw, the small scar near his right eyebrow she'd never noticed before. "I mean," he said softly, "that in 10 days you've become more important to me than Rebecca has been in 10 years. Sophia couldn't breathe. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to stay long enough for anyone to care about her or for her to care back. Grayson, she started, then stopped, unsure what to say. You don't have to say anything, he told her. I just wanted you to know where I stand. Before she could respond, the sound of a truck pulling up outside broke the moment. They both turned to see Mike from the garage climbing out of his vehicle. Morning, folks, he called cheerfully. Got some news about that van. Sophia and Grayson walked out to meet him, maintaining a careful distance between them that hadn't been there before. Parts came in early, Mike announced. I can have your van fixed by tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow. The word hit Sophia like a physical blow. She should be happy getting back on the road, continuing her mission. But all she felt was a hollow ache at the thought of leaving Sunfield Acres, leaving Grayson. That's great. She managed to say thank you, Mike. Mike beamed, oblivious to her inner turmoil. Just need you to come by the garage tomorrow to fill out some paperwork. And that work you did with Duke is payment enough for part of the bill. He's like a different dog already. After Mike left, Sophia and Grayson stood in silence, neither looking at the other. We should get to those chores, Grayson finally said, his voice carefully neutral. Sophia nodded, and they went about their morning tasks without the easy conversation that had become their routine. The weight of what Grayson had said and what Sophia hadn't said in return hung between them. By afternoon, dark clouds were gathering on the horizon, promising a summer storm. Sophia was in the vegetable garden harvesting tomatoes when Rebecca's red convertible came speeding up the driveway. The woman got out quickly, looking upset. Is Grayson in the house? She asked Sophia, not bothering with pleasantries. I think he's fixing the tractor in the barn, Sophia replied, standing up and brushing dirt from her knees. Rebecca headed that way without another word, her high heels sinking into the soft earth of the yard. Curious despite herself, Sophia followed at a distance. Inside the barn, she found Rebecca confronting Grayson, who was wiping grease from his hands with a rag. What do you mean you're not coming? Rebecca was saying, her voice rising. It's my father's retirement party. Everyone will be there. I already told you, Rebecca, Grayson replied calmly. I can't leave the farm right now. The summer harvest is starting, and I'm short-handed. That's what hired help is for. Rebecca gestured in Sophia's direction without looking at her. Or, is there another reason you don't want to come? Grayson's eyes flicked to Sophia, who stood awkwardly in the doorway. This isn't the time or place for this conversation. Oh, I think it is, Rebecca insisted. I came all this way because my father asked me to bring you to the party. He still thinks of you as a son, even after everything that happened with Ryan. At the mention of his brother, Grayson's expression hardened. Don't bring Ryan into this, Sophia. But backed away, feeling like an intruder on a private moment. She retreated to the house where she busied herself making dinner, a simple stew with vegetables from the garden. By the time Grayson came in, Rebecca was nowhere to be seen, and the red convertible was gone from the driveway. She left, Grayson said simply, washing his hands at the kitchen sink. Sophia stirred the stew, not looking at him. I'm sorry if I caused problems between you two. Grayson dried his hands on a dish towel. You didn't. Rebecca and I have been heading in different directions for years. She just doesn't want to admit it. He came to stand beside Sophia at the stove. That smells good. It's almost ready, Sophia said, still not meeting his eyes. Sophia, Grayson said gently. Look at me. Reluctantly, she turned to face him. What I said this morning, he began. I meant it. But I don't want you to feel pressured or uncomfortable. If you want to leave tomorrow when your van is fixed, I understand. Sophia finally looked up at him. It's not that I want to leave, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It's that I'm afraid to stay. The honesty of her words surprised them both. Outside, thunder rumbled, and rain began to patter against the windows. What are you afraid of? Grayson asked, his voice low. Sophia took a shaky breath. That I'll start to believe this could be real. That I could have a home, a life with someone, and then one day it will all disappear like it always does. Grayson reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Not everything disappears, Sophia. Some things are built to last, if you give them a chance. The tenderness in his touch, in his words, made tears spring to Sophia's eyes. She blinked them away, turning back to the stove. The stew's ready, she said, her voice unsteady. They ate dinner at the kitchen table while the storm raged outside. The conversation was careful, neutral topics like the weather and the farm. But every time their eyes met, Sophia felt the weight of words unsaid between them. After dinner, as they washed the dishes together, the lights flickered once, twice, and then went out, plunging the kitchen into darkness. Power outage, Grayson said calmly. Happens during storms. I'll get the flashlights. He moved confidently through the dark house, returning moments later with 2 flashlights and some candles. As he lit them, the warm glow illuminated his face, casting shadows that emphasized the strong line of his jaw, the gentle curve of his mouth. I should check on the animals, Sophia said, needing to escape the intimacy of the candlelit kitchen. I'll come with you, Grayson offered, grabbing a raincoat from a hook by the door and holding it out to her together. They ran through the downpour to the barn where the animals were restless from the storm. Duke was pacing anxiously in his pen, and the cats had huddled together in a corner of their enclosure. It's okay, Sophia soothed, moving from animal to animal, offering gentle touches and soft words. Just a little thunder. It'll pass. One of the barn's roof panels was leaking, dripping water onto the hay below. Grayson immediately went to work, moving animals away from the wet area and placing buckets to catch the worst of the drips. As they worked side by side in the dimly lit barn, Sophia was struck by how naturally they moved together, anticipating each other's needs without speaking. It felt right in a way that scared her. Sophia, Grayson said suddenly, straightening up from where he'd been securing a tarp. There's a job opening at the animal shelter in town, full-time position working with rescued animals, training them, getting them ready for adoption. Sophia stared at him. How do you know that? Mike mentioned it when he was here earlier, Grayson said. Made me think of you. I don't stay in one place, Sophia reminded him, though her voice lacked conviction. You could, Grayson said simply. The farmhouse has plenty of room for you and any animals that need a temporary home before they find their forever families. Sophie's heart pounded. Are you asking me to stay? Grayson set down his flashlight and stepped closer to her. In the dim light, his eyes were dark and serious. Yes, he said. I'm asking you to stay, not just for a week or a month, but for as long as you want to. Why? Sophia whispered, needing to hear him say it. Grayson reached out, gently taking her hands in his. Because in all my life, I've never met anyone who cares the way you do, who sees the hurt in others and doesn't turn away from it. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. Because when you're here, this farm feels like a home again, not just a place where I work and sleep. Sophia felt tears welling up again. I don't know how to stay in one place, she admitted. I've never had a real home. Then let me show you, Grayson said, his voice rough with emotion. Let me be the person who's still here, no matter how many times you check. Crash of thunder shook the barn, making the animals stir anxiously. Sophia moved automatically to comfort them, Grayson right beside her. Together they calmed the frightened creatures, working in unison as the storm raged outside. When the animals were settled again, Sophia found herself standing in the center of the barn, watching Grayson as he gently stroked one of the rescued cats, the tenderness in his touch, the care he showed for creatures that weren't even his responsibility. It made something shift inside her. I'm not saying I can promise anything, she said quietly. But maybe, maybe I could look into that job, see what it's like to stay in one place for a while. Grayson looked up, hope dawning in his eyes. Yeah, Sophia nodded, a small smile forming despite her fear. Yet, later that night, as the storm began to ease, they walked back to the house together. On the porch, protected from the light rain still falling, Grayson turned to face her. Whatever you decide tomorrow, he said softly, I want you to know that these past 2 weeks have been the best I've had in years. Sophia looked up at him, at this man who had opened his home and his heart to her without hesitation, who had seen her in a way no one ever had before. Mine too, she whispered. Grayson's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle, questioning. Sophia leaned into it, her eyes closing briefly at the warmth of his palm against her skin. When she opened her eyes again, Grayson was looking at her with such tenderness that it took her breath away, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. He leaned down, their lips met in a kiss as gentle as a summer rain. Tentative at first, then deepening as Sophia's arms slid around his neck. Grayson's hands found her waist, drawing her closer, and for the first time in her life, Sophia felt like she'd found something she didn't want to run from. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Grayson rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered again. Not for the animals or the job or even for me. Stay because you deserve a place that feels like home. Sophia didn't answer with words. Instead, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him again, pouring into it all the hope and fear and longing she couldn't yet express. Inside the house, in the darkness of the power outage, they lit more candles and sat together on the living room couch, talking late into the night. Sophia told Grayson about her childhood, about the homes where she'd felt like an unwanted guest, and the few where she'd almost belonged before being moved again. Grayson spoke of his brother's death, the grief that had nearly crushed him, the slow process of building a life again afterward. As the candles burned low and the storm outside finally passed, Sophia found herself curled against Grayson's side, his arm around her, Mateo sleeping at their feet. For the first time in her memory, the idea of staying still didn't feel like surrendering. It felt like the start of something new. Tomorrow her van would be fixed. Tomorrow she would have to make a choice. But tonight, in the warm circle of Grayson's arms, Sophia allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to finally stop running. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains as Sophia opened her eyes. For a moment she felt disoriented, then remembered she had fallen asleep on the couch with Grayson after their talk. She was alone now, covered with a soft blanket, Mateo snoring gently on the floor beside her. The events of the previous night came rushing back. The storm, the conversation in the barn, Grayson asking her to stay, their kiss on the porch. A warmth spread through her chest at the memory. Today, her van would be fixed. Today she needed to decide. The smell of coffee and bacon drew her to the kitchen, where she found Grayson at the stove, his back to her, He was humming softly, something she'd never heard him do before. "Morning," she said, her voice still husky. From sleep, Grayson turned, a smile spreading across his face. "Good morning." That smile made her heart skip. There was no awkwardness between them, just a new warmth, a sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. "Sleep, okay?" he asked, sliding a plate of bacon and eggs across the counter to her. Sophia nodded, taking a seat at the kitchen island. "Better than I have in a long time." They ate breakfast together, talking about the farm chores for the day, the weather forecast. Dukes progressed ordinary topics that felt different now, tinged with the awareness that this could be her everyday life, if she chose it. "Mike called while you were asleep," Grayson said, watching her carefully. "Your van's ready. He said you can pick it up any time today." Sophia's stomach tightened. "Oh, I told him we'd come by this afternoon." Grayson reached across the table and took her hand. "No pressure, Sophia. Whatever you decide, I'll support it." She looked down at their joined hands, his tanned and calloused from years of farm work, hers smaller but no less marked by her own labors of love. "I need to see about that job first," she said, surprising herself with the decision. "Before I'll make any promises." Grayson's smile was like sunrise. "I'll drive you into town after morning chores." That afternoon, they drove to Hillside, the small town closest to Sunfield Acres. Sophia sat nervously in the passenger seat of Grayson's truck, Mateo in the back seat, watching the scenery pass by. Rolling fields gave way to neat houses with wide porches, then to the small downtown area with its brick storefronts and American flags hanging from lampposts. "Nervous?" Grayson asked, glancing at her as they parked in front of a red brick building with a sign that read Hillside Animal Shelter. "Terrified," Sophia admitted. "I haven't had a real job in 3 years. Just odd jobs here and there to pay for gas and animal food." Grayson reached over and squeezed her hand. "They'd be lucky to have you." Inside, they were greeted by a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled into a practical ponytail. Her name tag read Linda. "You must be Sophia," Linda said warmly. "Mike told me you might be stopping by. He says you worked wonders with Duke in just a couple of weeks." Sophia smiled, relaxing a little. "He's a good dog. Just needed someone to be patient with him." "That's exactly what we need here," Linda said, gesturing for Sophia to follow her. "Someone with patience and a gift for understanding animals that others have given up on." For the next hour, Linda showed Sophia around the shelter. It was small but clean, with about 20 dogs and twice as many cats waiting for homes. Linda explained that they had recently received a grant to expand their rehabilitation program for animals with behavioral issues, animals that would otherwise be considered unadoptable. "We need someone full-time to work with these special cases," Linda explained as they watched a nervous border collie pace in her kennel. "Someone who can see past the fear and aggression to the animal underneath." Sophia felt a flutter of excitement. This was exactly the kind of work she'd been doing on her own for years. "The position includes health insurance and 2 weeks paid vacation," Linda continued. "And we're flexible about animals with special needs coming home with staff. We understand. It's sometimes the best environment for rehabilitation." By the time they left, Sophia had a job offer in hand and a start date for the following Monday. The salary wasn't much, but it was steady income, something she hadn't had in years. "What do you think?" Grayson asked as they walked back to the truck. Sophia looked around the small town, the diner on the corner, the hardware store where an elderly man was sweeping the sidewalk, the park across the street where children played under the watchful eyes of their parents. "It feels right," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Their next stop was Mike's garage, where Sophia's van sat in the parking lot, looking cleaner than it had in months. "Gave her a wash while I was at it," Mike said proudly, handing Sophia the keys. "She's running good as new." "Better." Even Sophia clutched the keys, suddenly overwhelmed. This van had been her home, her security, her escape route whenever things got tough. The idea of parking it permanently made her palms sweat. "Thank you," she told Mike, her voice slightly unsteady, "for everything." "So, you sticking around?" Mike asked, glancing between her and Grayson with knowing eyes. Sophia took a deep breath. "I'm going to give it a try." Back at Sunfield Acres, Sophia parked her van next to Grayson's truck in front of the farmhouse. It felt symbolic somehow, her life coming to rest beside his. "I should get my things from the spare room," she said as they walked up the porch steps. "Move them back into the van." Grayson stopped, his expression concerned. "You're still planning to live in the van?" Sophia hesitated. I don't know. It feels safer, somehow, having everything I own with me, ready to go if I need to." Understanding crossed Grayson's face. He took both her hands in his. "How about a compromise? The van stays right where it is. Your things stay in the house in whichever room you feel comfortable in. If you ever want to leave, everything's right here waiting." The kindness of the offer, the way he understood her need for an escape route without judgment, made tears spring to Sophia's eyes. "Whichever room," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Grayson's eyes darkened slightly. "Your choice. No pressure." That night, Sophia moved her few belongings back into the spare room. It wasn't rejection. They both knew they needed time, needed to be sure. But she left the door open, And when Grayson passed in the hallway on his way to bed, their eyes met with a promise of someday. The days settled into a new routine. Sophia would wake early, help Grayson with morning chores, then drive into town for her shift at the shelter. In the evenings they would make dinner together, talking about their days, planning improvements for the farm, watching Duke's continued progress. Sometimes Grayson would join Sophia in the barn at night, sitting beside her in the hay as she read to the animals, a habit she couldn't seem to break. Other times they would sit on the porch swing, watching the sunset turn the fields to gold, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him. They took things slowly, both of them cautious for different reasons. Grayson never pushed, never made Sophia feel like she owed him anything for letting her stay. And gradually, the farmhouse began to feel like home. 2 weeks after Sophia started her new job, Linda approached her at the shelter. "There's a situation I think you might be able to help with," the older woman said, her expression troubled. "Farm, about 30 miles from here. Owner died, and the bank is foreclosing. There are animals that need to be rehomed quickly." Sophia immediately agreed to help. That afternoon, she and Linda drove out to the property, a rundown farm with peeling paint and overgrown fields. The contrast to Sunfield Acres' neat fences and well-tended crops was stark. Inside the barn, they found 3 horses in desperate need of care, a pregnant goat, and several chickens. The animals were thin but not critically ill. They had just been neglected as the elderly owner's health failed. "The shelter can take the chickens, but we don't have facilities for the larger animals," Linda explained. "And all the local rescue organizations are full." Sophia stood in the dusty barn, looking at the hopeful eyes of the horses, watching her from their stalls. She thought of Grayson, of the empty paddock behind his barn, of his generous heart. I might know a place," she said slowly, "but I need to make a call first." Grayson answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. Sophia explained the situation, then held her breath, waiting for his response. "Bring them home," he said without hesitation. "All of them." That evening, as the sun was setting, Sophia led 3 tired horses into Grayson's paddock. The pregnant goat was settled in a clean stall in the barn, and the chickens were clucking contentedly in a hastily prepared coop. Grayson stood beside Sophia at the fence, watching the horses explore their new home. "Thank you," Sophia said, leaning against his shoulder. "I know it's a lot to take on." Grayson wrapped his arm around her waist. "That's what this place is for," he said. "A home for creatures that need one." He looked down at her, his eyes soft in the fading light. "Including you." Something shifted in Sophia's heart at those words, a letting go of the last of her resistance. Standing there with Grayson, watching these newly rescued animals find safety, she finally allowed herself to believe that she too had found a place to belong that night. Sophia moved her things from the spare room to Grayson's room. Their first night together was tender and unhurried, a gentle exploration of trust and vulnerability that left Sophia feeling more cherished than she ever had in her life. Afterward, lying in Grayson's arms, Sophia whispered, "I'm still afraid this won't last." Grayson kissed her forehead softly. "Fear is just love with nowhere to go," he said. "So let it come to me instead." In the weeks that followed, Sophia bloomed like the flowers in Grayson's garden. Her work at the shelter was challenging but rewarding, and the farm became a satellite location for animals needing special rehabilitation. Word spread about Sophia's gift with troubled animals, and soon people from neighboring towns were bringing her their most difficult cases. Grayson watched her with pride, supporting her dreams, even when it meant their home was constantly filled with new creatures. He built additional enclosures, converted an old storage shed into a rehabilitation space, and never complained when he found cat hair on his favorite shirt or a rabbit in the bathtub. One evening in late summer, Sophia sat on the porch steps, watching as Grayson worked with one of the rescued horses in the paddock. His patience, his gentle hands, his soft words of encouragement, they were the same qualities that had helped her learn to trust again. Sophia was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the car coming up the driveway until it was nearly at the house. It wasn't until Mateo barked that she looked up to see a sleek black sedan pulling to a stop. A woman in her 60s stepped out, elegant in a navy blue pantsuit, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob. There was something familiar about her, though. Sophia was certain they had never met. "Can I help you?" Sophia asked, standing up. The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm looking for Grayson Hale. He's in the paddock," Sophia replied, gesturing toward where Grayson was still working with the horse. "I can get him for you." "Please do," the woman said. "Tell him Eleanor Winters is here." Winters, Rebecca's last name. Sophia felt a flutter of unease as she walked to the paddock. Grayson looked up when she approached, his smile fading as he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" "There's someone here to see you," Sophia told him. "Eleanor Winters." Grayson's face went blank for a moment, then he nodded grimly. "Rebecca's mother. I should have expected this." Together, they walked back to the house, where Eleanor was still standing beside her car, looking around the farm with a critical eye. "Eleanor," Grayson greeted her, his voice carefully neutral. "This is a surprise, is it?" Eleanor replied. "When you missed David's retirement party and stopped returning Rebecca's calls, I thought someone should check on you." Her gaze shifted to Sophia, taking in her work jeans and simple t-shirt with barely concealed disdain. "And you must be the reason why." Grayson's hand found Sophia's, his fingers intertwining with hers. Eleanor, this is Sofia Delgado, my partner. Sophia, this is Eleanor Winters, Rebecca's mother, and an old family friend. Partner. The word sent a warm glow through Sophia's chest. Despite the tension of the moment, Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. I see. Well, perhaps we could talk privately, Grayson. Family matters. Anything you have to say can be said in front of Sophia, Grayson replied firmly. Eleanor sighed. Very well. David and I are concerned about you, Grayson. After everything that happened with Ryan, and now, this. She gestured vaguely at the farm, with its assortment of animal enclosures and rescue equipment. It seems you're letting your brother's death affect your judgment. Sophia felt Grayson stiffen beside her. My brother has nothing to do with this, he said, his voice tight, doesn't he? Eleanor's voice softened, became almost sympathetic. First you refused to sell this place after the flood nearly wiped you, then you cut ties with the social circle your parents worked so hard to establish for you. And now, instead of building a proper business, you're turning the farm into some kind of animal sanctuary. She looked pointedly at Sophia. With a woman you barely know, Sophia's instinct was to shrink away, to retreat to the barn with her animals where things were simpler. But then she felt Grayson's hand tighten around hers, grounding her. I've known Sophia long enough to recognize what truly matters, Grayson said, his voice steady. She sees value in things most people throw away. She builds instead of destroys. She stays even when it's hard. Eleanor looked taken aback by his vehemence. Grayson, I'm only thinking of your future. Your parents would be happy. Grayson interrupted. They'd be happy that I've found someone who makes this place feel like home again. Someone who understands that a farm isn't just about profit, it's about life and growth and care. Eleanor studied them both for a long moment, then sighed. Rebecca will be disappointed. Rebecca moved on a long time ago, Grayson said. We both know she's only interested when her father brings up the old idea of merging our properties. Eleanor didn't deny it. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. David asked me to give you this. It's an offer for your land, a generous one. He's planning a development project in the area, and your property would be the centerpiece. Grayson didn't take the envelope. My land isn't for sale, Eleanor. Not now, not ever. Eleanor placed the envelope on the hood of her car. Think about it, Grayson. That flood nearly bankrupted you. Another bad season and you could lose everything. Her eyes flicked to Sophia. Everything. After Eleanor left, Sophia and Grayson stood in silence, watching the dust settle on the driveway. What did she mean about the flood? Sophia finally asked. Grayson sighed, running a hand through his hair. 2 years ago, the creek overflowed, destroyed half my crops, damaged some of the outbuildings. Insurance didn't cover everything, so I had to take out a loan to rebuild. You never told me, Sophia said softly. It's not something I like to think about. Grayson's jaw tightened. It happened the same year as Ryan's accident. It felt like the world was ending. Sophia leaned against him, offering comfort with her presence. Is she right? Are you in financial trouble? Grayson wrapped his arms around her. Things are tight sometimes, but the farm is profitable. The organic crops bring in good money, and I've been paying down the loan steadily. He kissed the top of her head. We're okay, Sophia, I promise. But that night, Sophia found Grayson at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, bank statements, loan documents, invoices. His expression was troubled as he ran calculations on a worn calculator. What is it? Sophia asked, sitting beside him. And don't tell me nothing. Grayson hesitated, then pushed a statement toward her. The loan payments are going up next quarter, and the tractor needs repairs I wasn't counting on. Sophia looked at the numbers, her stomach sinking. The margin between income and expenses was thinner than Grayson had admitted. We'll figure it out, she said with more confidence than she felt. I can put more of my paycheck toward the household expenses, and maybe we can talk to the bank about refinancing. Grayson looked at her with such tenderness that it made her throat tight. You said we, Sophia blinked, realizing he was right. Sometime in the past weeks, she had stopped thinking of herself as a temporary visitor and started seeing the farm as partly hers, its problems, its joys, its future. Yes, she said softly. Grayson gathered the papers into a neat stack. We'll make it work, he agreed, reaching for her hand. Together, but as they went to bed that night, Sophia couldn't shake the image of Eleanor's disapproving face, or the threat implied in her words about losing everything. For the first time since deciding to stay, Sophia felt the old fear creeping back, the fear that happiness was temporary, that security was an illusion. The next morning, Sophia woke early and slipped out of bed without waking Grayson. She made coffee and took a mug out to the porch, where she sat watching the sun rise over the fields that had become her home. Mateo joined her, resting his head on her lap as she stroked his ears absently. What do you think, boy? She whispered. Are we tempting fate by staying? The dog looked up at her with trusting eyes, and Sophia was reminded of all the animals she'd rescued over the years. How many times had she told them they were safe now, that they had found their forever home? How could she doubt the same possibility for herself? She was still sitting there when Grayson found her, the morning light turning his hair golden as he settled beside her on the porch steps. Pennyfoot, your thoughts? he said, bumping his shoulder gently against hers. Sophia took a deep breath. What if Eleanor's right? What if I'm just a distraction, pulling you away from what you should be doing? Grayson turned to face her fully. And what exactly does Eleanor think I should be doing? Running a proper business, making connections, with the right people, marrying someone like Rebecca. Sophia couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Is that what you think I want? Grayson asked quietly. Sophia looked down at her hands. I think you had a different life before I showed up with a van full of strays. A more normal life. Grayson was silent for a moment. Then he stood, offering her his hand. Come with me, I want to show you something. Curious, Sophia followed him across the yard to a small shed she'd never entered. Grayson unlocked a door and flipped on a light, revealing a space that was part workshop, part office. A drafting table stood against one wall, covered with sketches and blueprints. What is this? Sophia asked, moving closer to examine the drawings. My plans, Grayson explained, standing beside her. I've been working on them for about a year now. The blueprints showed Sunfield Acres transformed expanded barns, paddocks arranged in a wheel around a central treatment facility, housing units, connected by covered walkways, a sanctuary. Sophia breathed, recognizing the layout from similar facilities she'd visited in her travels. Grayson nodded. I've been saving up, applying for grants. It's slow going, but ... He looked at her, vulnerability in his eyes. Before you came, it was just a dream. Something to distract me from how empty this place felt. But now, ... now, it could be real. Sophia finished for him. Understanding dawning. That's why Eleanor was so upset. She thinks I'm encouraging you to pursue this instead of selling to her husband. She's right about that part, Grayson said with a small smile. You are encouraging me every day, with everything you do. He took her hands in his. Sophia, this dream isn't in spite of you. It's because of you. Sophia looked back at the blueprints, seeing not just a sanctuary for animals, but a vision for their future together. A purpose bigger than either of them alone. I was so afraid, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. When Eleanor showed up, all I could think was that I was going to lose our home. That maybe I never deserved it in the first place. Grayson cupped her face in his hands. You deserve everything, Sophia. A home, a purpose, someone who sees how amazing you are. And I plan to spend every day making sure you know it. He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a promise sealed. When they broke apart, Sophia smiled up at him. So, partner, when do we start building this sanctuary of ours? The weeks that followed were busy ones. Sophia continued her work at the shelter while helping Grayson refine his plans for the sanctuary. They applied for additional grants, met with an architect who specialized in animal care facilities, and began small renovations they could afford immediately. Word spread through the community about their vision. Mike from the garage organized a volunteer day to help repair fencing. Linda from the shelter connected them with donors who supported animal welfare causes. Even the local feed store offered a discount on supplies when they heard about the plans. Not everyone was supportive. Rebecca returned, making a show of dropping by just to check in, her eyes widening in false concern when she saw the modest improvements underway. Grayson, darling, you're not seriously turning your family's farm into a zoo, are you? She asked, her voice sticky with fake sweetness. Not a zoo, Grayson replied calmly. A sanctuary, for animals and people who need healing. Rebecca's smile tightened. Daddy's offer still stands. You know, you could start fresh somewhere else. Do something ... normal. Before Grayson could respond, Sophia stepped forward. Normal is overrated, she said, surprising herself with her confidence. What Grayson's building here is extraordinary. Rebecca's eyes narrowed as she looked between them. Well, she said finally, I hope you know what you're doing. She left without saying goodbye. I'm sorry, Sophia said after Rebecca's car had disappeared down the driveway. I shouldn't have spoken for you. Grayson wrapped his arms around her, from behind, resting his chin on her head. You didn't speak for me, you spoke with me. He turned her to face him. That's what partners do. That night, as they lay in bed, Sophia curled against Grayson's side. She thought about how much had changed in just a few months. Her van still sat in the driveway, but she rarely thought about it anymore. The keys hung on a hook by the door. Unused, Grayson, she whispered, not sure if he was still awake. He responded, his voice drowsy. I love you. It was the first time she'd said the words. They had been there for weeks, maybe even from the beginning, but Sophia had held them back, afraid that saying them aloud would somehow break the spell of happiness she'd found. Grayson went very still, then propped himself up on his elbow to look down at her in the dim light. Say that again, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Sophia smiled up at him. I love you, Grayson Hale. Grayson's answering smile was like sunrise. And I love you, Sophia Delgado. Have since the day you showed up barefoot on my porch with a 3-legged dog and a heart bigger than this whole farm. Their kiss was deep and tender, a sealing of promises that neither of them had to speak aloud. Late September brought the fall harvest and a flurry of activity on the farm. Sophia took a week off from the shelter to help Grayson bring in the crops, working side by side from dawn until dusk. The work was exhausting but satisfying, connecting them to the rhythm of the land in a way that made their bond even stronger. On the last day of harvest, as they were storing the final crates of vegetables in the cool cellar beneath the barn, Grayson paused, leaning on a shovel and looking around with satisfaction. "Best crop I've had in years," he said. "Should get a good price at the farmer's market tomorrow." Sophia smiled, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "And that grant application for the sanctuary expansion looks promising. The foundation seemed really interested when we gave them the tour last week." Grayson nodded, but there was something in his expression, a hint of worry she hadn't seen in weeks. "What is it?" she asked, moving closer to him. "Nothing," he said, then sighed when she raised an eyebrow skeptically. "It's just ... I got a call from the bank yesterday. They're concerned about the loan payments, with all the investments we're making in the sanctuary. They want to schedule a meeting next week to discuss options." Sophia's stomach tightened. "That sounds ominous." "It's probably nothing," Grayson said, trying to sound reassuring. "Just routine." But they both knew it. Wasn't the sanctuary renovations, modest as they were, had stretched their resources thin. If the grant didn't come through, or if the harvest didn't bring in as much as they hoped, ... Sophia pushed the worry aside. "We'll figure it out," she said firmly. "Together, remember." Grayson smiled, pulling her into his arms. Together, he agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple that night. Long after Grayson had fallen asleep, Sophia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The financial worries were real, but beneath them lay a deeper fear that the life they were building was too good to be true, that it could all slip away as quickly as it had come. She slipped out of bed and padded downstairs, needing to move, to think. In the kitchen, she found Duke waiting by the back door, his tail wagging hopefully. "You need to go out, boy," she whispered, opening the door for him. She followed the dog onto the porch, wrapping her arms around herself in the cool night air. The farm was peaceful under the moonlight, the fields stretching silver and still to the horizon. Her gaze drifted to her van, parked where it had been since the day she decided to stay. A sudden impulse seized her. Sophia went back inside, found her keys on the hook by the door, and walked out to the van. She unlocked it and slid into the driver's seat, the familiar smell of old upholstery and dog hair enveloping her. For 3 years, this van had been her only constant, her escape route, her safety net. Even as she'd built a life with Grayson, part of her had kept one foot out the door, ready to run if things fell apart. Sophia put the key in the ignition but didn't turn it. Instead, she sat there, hands on the steering wheel, remembering all the times she'd driven away from places, from people, from the possibility of being hurt again. Sophia. Grayson's voice startled her. He stood beside the van, hair tousled from sleep, concern in his eyes. "Are you leaving?" he asked quietly, no accusation in his voice, just a simple question. Sophia looked at him, this man who had opened his home and his heart to her, who had never once tried to cage her or change her, who had simply loved her, strays and all. "No," she said, and as she spoke the word, she felt something shift inside her final, letting go of the fear that had driven her for so long. "I'm just ... saying goodbye." Understanding dawned in Grayson's eyes. He opened the van door and held out his hand to her. "Come back to bed," he said softly. "It's getting cold out here." Sophia took his hand and stepped out of the van. Instead of going back to the house, though, she led him to the center of the yard where they could see the whole farm spread out around them in the moonlight. "I was afraid," she admitted, "that the bank would take everything away. That we'd lose the farm, the sanctuary, our home." Grayson wrapped his arms around her from behind, his warmth chasing away the night chill. "We might," he said honestly. "There are no guarantees, Sophia, but even if we lost the farm tomorrow, we wouldn't lose what matters most." Sophia leaned back against him. "Because," she said softly. "And the strays," Grayson added with a smile she could hear in his voice. "Don't forget, I promised Duke a forever home." Sophia turned in his arms to face him. "I spent so long running because I was afraid of losing things. But you can't lose what you never let yourself have." Grayson's hand came up to cup her cheek. "And now I'm all in," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the tears that threatened. "Whatever happens with the bank, with the sanctuary, with anything, I'm not running anymore." The kiss they shared under the moonlight felt like a vow, more binding than any formal promise could be. When they finally broke apart, Grayson took her hand and led her back to the house back home. The next morning, Sophia woke to find Grayson already up and gone. A note on his pillow read simply, "Trust me, back soon." She went about her morning routine, feeding the animals and making coffee, wondering what Grayson was up to. It wasn't until mid-morning that she heard his truck coming up the driveway. She stepped onto the porch. She found not just Grayson but Mike from the garage as well, both of them grinning like they shared a secret. "What's going on?" Sophia asked, coming down the steps to meet them. Grayson nodded toward her van. "I had an idea last night. After our talk, Mike and I have been working on it all morning." Curious, Sophia walked over to her van. At first, she didn't see anything different. Then she noticed the tires. They were brand new, and underneath, where rust had been eating away at the chassis, fresh metal gleamed. "We fixed all the rust spots," replaced the brake lines, and put in a new radiator, Mike explained proudly. She's roadworthy now, good for another 100,000 miles. Sophia looked at Grayson confused. But I'm not leaving. Grayson took her hands. I know that, but I want you to stay because you want to, not because you don't have other options. He gestured to the van. Now you can go anywhere, anytime. Which means that every day you choose to stay is exactly that, a choice. The gift was so perfectly suited to her, so understanding of her deepest fears, that Sophia felt tears well up. This man knew her, really knew her in a way no one ever had before. Thank you, she whispered, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. Mike cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, I should get going. Left my apprentice minding the shop. After Mike left, Sophia turned back to Grayson. I don't deserve you, she said softly. Grayson smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Yes, you do. You deserve everything. Good, Sophia. I just hope I'm lucky enough to be part of it. As they stood together in the yard, Sophia's newly repaired van behind them and their home before them, Sophia felt a peace she'd never known before. The future was still uncertain. The bank meeting loomed. The sanctuary plans were still just dreams on paper, and life would always bring challenges they couldn't predict. But for the first time, Sophia wasn't afraid of what tomorrow might bring, because whatever happened, they would face it together, two hearts that had found their home in each other. The morning of the bank meeting dawned clear and crisp, with the first hint of autumn in the air. Sophia woke to find Grayson already dressed, in his one good suit, standing before the mirror, adjusting his tie with fingers that weren't quite steady. Here, let me, Sophia said, sliding out of bed and coming to stand before him. She straightened his tie with careful hands, then smoothed the lapels of his jacket. You look very handsome. Grayson caught her hands and pressed a kiss to her palms. I'm nervous, he admitted. There's a lot riding on this meeting. Sophia nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. After breakfast, they drove to the bank in Grayson's truck. Sophia had taken the day off from the shelter to accompany him, wearing the nicest outfit she owned, a simple blue dress she'd bought for her job interview. The bank manager, Mr. Peterson, was a balding man with wire-rimmed glasses and a polite but distant manner. He welcomed them into his office with a firm handshake and gestured for them to sit in the leather chairs across from his desk. Mr. Hale, he began, opening a folder that Sophia could see contained Grayson's loan documents. I've reviewed your account, and I must say I have some concerns. Grayson sat straighter, his jaw tight. What kind of concerns? Your loan payments have been on time, but just barely. And now I understand you're investing in renovations to turn the property into some kind of animal sanctuary. Mr. Peterson's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. From a financial standpoint, it seems risky. The farm is profitable, Grayson countered, and the sanctuary will bring in additional revenue through grants and donations. Mr. Peterson looked skeptical. Perhaps, but grants aren't guaranteed, and donations can be unpredictable. He shuffled through some papers. There's also the matter of a recent offer for your property. Quite a generous one, from what I hear. Sophia felt her stomach drop. How did the bank know about David Winter's offer? Grayson's expression hardened. My land is not for sale. That's your decision. Of course, Mr. Peterson said smoothly. But as your lender, we need to ensure that our investment is secure. Given the current circumstances, we're considering calling in the loan. Calling it in, Grayson repeated, his voice tight. The term isn't up for another 3 years. There's a clause in the agreement, Mr. Peterson explained, pointing to a paragraph of fine print. If the bank determines that the collateral property is at risk of devaluation, we can require early repayment. Sophia watched the color drain from Grayson's face. She knew what this meant. They would have to come up with the remaining balance of the loan immediately or lose the farm. Money they didn't have. That's not fair, she said, speaking up for the first time. The farm isn't being devalued. We're improving it. Mr. Peterson looked at her with mild surprise, as if he'd forgotten she was there. Ms. Delgado, isn't it? The bank's definition of improvement is based on market value, not personal vision. And converting productive farmland into a sanctuary for unwanted animals doesn't increase market value. The way he said unwanted animals made Sophia's blood boil before she could respond. However, the office door opened, and a woman entered without knocking. Sorry I'm late, the newcomer said, striding confidently to the desk. Traffic was terrible. She was perhaps 50, with short gray hair and sharp eyes behind stylish glasses. Her tailored pantsuit spoke of money, but her practical shoes suggested someone who valued function over fashion. Mr. Peterson stood quickly. Mrs. Mitchell, we weren't expecting you. Clearly, the woman said dryly. She turned to Sophia and Grayson, extending her hand. Margaret Mitchell, I'm on the board of directors, here at First National. Grayson shook her hand, confusion evident on his face. I'm sorry, have we met? Not formally, Margaret replied, but I know your farm. My niece adopted a dog from the shelter where you work, Ms. Delgado, a German shepherd named Duke, I believe. Sophia's eyes widened in recognition. You're Emily's aunt. She adopted Duke last month. Margaret nodded, a small smile warming her face. He's a different dog than the one she first told me about. confident, loving. She said you worked miracles with him. Sophia has a gift, Grayson said, pride evident in his voice despite the tension of the situation. Margaret turned back to Mr. Peterson, who was watching the exchange with poorly concealed impatience. I'd like to see the loan documents, please. Mr. Peterson hesitated, then passed the folder to her. As I was explaining to Mr. Hale, the bank is concerned about the changes being made to the property. Yes, I heard most of your conversation. From the hallway, Margaret interrupted, scanning the documents quickly. And I disagree with your assessment. She set the folder down and looked directly at Grayson and Sophia. Tell me about this sanctuary you're planning. For the next 15 minutes, Grayson outlined their vision, with Sophia adding details about the rehabilitation programs they wanted to implement. Margaret listened attentively, asking pointed questions about funding, operational costs, and community involvement. When they finished, she nodded thoughtfully. So you're not converting the entire farm, you're adding the sanctuary as a complementary operation, while maintaining the organic crop production that's been successful. Exactly, Grayson confirmed. The crops provide steady income, and the sanctuary will be supported through grants, donations, and educational programs. Margaret turned to Mr. Peterson. This isn't devaluation, it's diversification. We encourage our agricultural clients to consider in today's market. She closed the folder decisively. The bank will not be calling in this loan early. Mr. Peterson's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. As you wish, Mrs. Mitchell. In fact, Margaret continued, I'd like to discuss refinancing options that might better support Mr. Hale's expansion plans. She glanced at Sophia and Ms. Delgado, since it appears they're partners in this venture. Sophia and Grayson exchanged a look of cautious hope. That would be ... very helpful, Grayson said carefully. Good. Margaret stood. Mr. Peterson, please prepare the refinancing paperwork for Mr. Hale and Ms. Delgado to review. I'll stop by later to discuss the terms with you. Her tone made it clear that the meeting was over. Mr. Peterson nodded stiffly and rose from his chair. Outside the bank, Sophia and Grayson stood in the sunshine, still processing what had just happened. Did that really just work out in our favor? Sophia asked, half afraid to believe it. Grayson looked as stunned as she felt. I think it did, Mr. Hale, Miss Delgado. They turned to see Margaret Mitchell exiting the bank behind them. I hope you don't mind the interruption back there, she said as she approached. I've been following your shelter's work for some time, and when my niece told me about her experience with Duke, I became more interested. Then I heard through the grapevine that you were having some banking issues. A small town, Grayson said, with a rueful smile. Indeed, Margaret's expression became more serious. I should tell you that David Winters contacted the bank directly about your loan. He suggested that the bank would benefit from foreclosing and selling the property to him instead. Sophia gasped. Is that legal? It's a gray area, Margaret replied, and not uncommon, unfortunately. But I don't appreciate outside pressure on our lending decisions. She handed Grayson a business card. Call me next week. I think your sanctuary project might qualify for a special small business development program we have. As Margaret walked away, Sophia turned to Grayson, her mind reeling. Did we just get a powerful ally? Grayson looked down at the business card in his hand, then back at Sophia. His face broke into a grin that made him look years younger. I think we did. He pulled her into a tight embrace right there on the sidewalk, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. When he set her down, his eyes were shining. We're going to be okay, he said, his voice filled with wonder. We're actually going to be okay. The drive back to the farm was filled with excited conversation about the refinancing possibilities and what it would mean for their plans. The weight that had been pressing on them for weeks had lifted, replaced by a cautious optimism that grew stronger with every mile as they turned onto the long driveway leading to Sunfield Acres. Sophia felt a surge of emotion at the sight of the farmhouse, the barn, the fields stretching out around them. This was her home in a way no place had ever been before. I want to celebrate, Grayson said as they parked in front of the house. Just the two of us. A proper dinner, maybe open that bottle of wine Mike gave us when you started it. The shelter, Sophia smiled, leaning over to kiss him softly. That sounds perfect. That evening, after finishing their chores and making sure all the animals were settled for the night, Sophia dressed in her blue dress again while Grayson prepared dinner. He had been mysteriously busy in the kitchen for hours, shooing her away whenever she tried to peek. When she finally came downstairs, she found the dining room transformed. Candles flickered on the table, which was set with the good dishes Grayson's mother had left behind. A vase of wildflowers from the meadow stood in the center. This is beautiful, Sophia said, touched by the effort he had put into making the evening special. Grayson turned from the stove, and his expression when he saw her made Sophia's heart skip. Even after months together, he still looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, with wonder and appreciation that never failed to make her feel cherished. You're beautiful, he corrected, crossing the room to take her hands. The dress is nice too. The dinner was simple but delicious. Grayson's specialty of herb-roasted chicken with vegetables from their garden. They talked and laughed as they ate, the conversation flowing easily between them as it always did. Sophia found herself thinking, How different this was from the meals she'd eaten alone in her van for so many years. Not just the food, but the warmth, the connection, the sense of belonging. After dinner, Grayson suggested a walk before dessert. The night was clear, with a full moon bathing the farm in silver light. Hand in hand, they strolled past the barn, the paddock where the rescued horses dozed, standing up, the garden with its neat rows of vegetables. "Remember that first night you were here?" Grayson asked as they reached the edge of the field where wildflowers grew in abundance during the storm. Sophia nodded, smiling at the memory. "I was so determined not to get attached to this place, to you, and now?" Grayson asked, turning to face her. "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else," she admitted. "With anyone else." Grayson's eyes were intense in the moonlight. "Good," he said softly, "because I have something to ask you." Before Sophia could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Her breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple ring with a small diamond that caught the moonlight. "It was my grandmother's," Grayson explained, his voice slightly unsteady. "My mother gave it to me years ago, said to save it for when I found someone special." Sophia couldn't speak, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Grayson could hear. "It's Sophia Delgado," Grayson continued, taking her hand in his. "You came into my life with a broken-down van and a heart too big for your own good. You taught me that home isn't just a place, it's where you find people who love you exactly as you are." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Sophia. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Sophia's eyes, spilling over before she could stop them. For a moment, she was overwhelmed by the journey that had brought her here. From a lonely child shuttled between foster homes to a woman who had finally found where she belonged. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, Grayson, I'll marry you." His smile was brilliant in the moonlight as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her all along. When he pulled her into his arms, Sophia felt that same sense of rightness, that she had found her place in the world. At last. Later, as they walked back to the house hand in hand, Sophia looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked. Grayson considered the question. "I believe that sometimes the universe puts the right people in our path at exactly the moment we need them." He squeezed her hand. "Why do you ask?" Sophia thought about all the coincidences that had led her to Sunfield Acres, the van breaking down at precisely that spot, Grayson being home to answer the door, Mike knowing about the job at the shelter, even Duke bringing Margaret Mitchell into their lives. "Because I think my van knew what it was doing when it broke down here," she said with a smile. "It was bringing me home." The weeks that followed were busy ones. With the refinancing secured through Margaret Mitchell's help, they were able to begin the first phase of the sanctuary renovations. The old storage shed was converted into a proper rehabilitation space for injured wildlife, and the barn was expanded to include more stalls for larger rescue animals. Sophia continued her work at the shelter while overseeing the sanctuary development. Word spread about what they were creating, and soon volunteers began showing up on weekends. College students from the nearby university, retirees with time on their hands, families wanting to teach their children about animal care. "It's becoming a real community," Sophia remarked one Sunday afternoon as she watched a group of volunteers building new chicken coops under Grayson's direction. Linda from the shelter, who had stopped by with a donation of supplies, nodded in agreement. "People need this as much as the animals do," she observed. "A place to contribute, to feel useful." As autumn deepened into winter, Sophia and Grayson settled into a rhythm that felt both comfortable and exciting. Their days were full of work, but it was work they loved. Side by side, their nights were warm and intimate, talking late into the darkness about their plans, their dreams, their future together. They decided on a spring wedding, small and simple, held on the farm with just their closest friends in attendance. Sophia found herself unexpectedly enjoying the planning, with Linda and some of the women from town offering help and advice. One crisp December morning, Sophia woke to find snow falling softly outside the bedroom window. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Grayson, and stood watching the white flakes transform the familiar landscape into something magical. A sound from downstairs caught her attention, a car engine. Visitors arriving unusually early. Curious, she pulled on Grayson's robe over her pajamas and went to see who it was. Through the front window, she saw a sleek black car in the driveway similar to Margaret Mitchell's, but not the same. As she watched, David and Eleanor Winters emerged, followed by Rebecca. All three were dressed expensively against the cold, their expressions determined. Sophia's stomach tightened. She hurried back upstairs to wake Grayson. "The Winters are here," she said as he blinked awake. "All of them." Grayson sat up quickly. "What do they want?" "I don't know, but it can't be good." They dressed hastily and went downstairs together just as a knock sounded at the door. Grayson squeezed Sophia's hand reassuringly before opening it. "David," he greeted the older man standing on the porch. "Eleanor, Rebecca, this is unexpected." David Winters was tall and distinguished, with the same confident bearing as his wife, Grayson. He said with a nod, "May we come in? It's rather cold out here." Grayson hesitated, then stepped back to allow them entry. The three Winters filed into the living room. bringing with them the scent of expensive perfume and an air of entitlement that made Sofia bristle. "This is my fiancée, Sofia Delgado," Grayson said, emphasizing the word fiancé slightly. David's eyebrows rose, but he offered Sofia a polite nod. "Congratulations to you both. What can we do for you, David?" Grayson asked, not bothering with small talk. David reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope identical to the one Eleanor had left months ago. "I've come to make you a final offer on the property," he said, placing the envelope on the coffee table. "Double my previous one." Sofia felt Grayson stiffen beside her. "I've already told you, the farm is not for sale. Even at twice the market value," David pressed. "That's a very generous offer, Grayson. You could start fresh somewhere else, without the burden of the old loan." "We've refinanced," Grayson said evenly. "The loan is no longer an issue." Eleanor made a sound of disbelief. "Through that Mitchell woman, I assume." "Really, Grayson, allowing sentiment to cloud your business judgment." "It's not sentiment," Sofia interrupted, unable to stay silent any longer. "It's vision. What we're building here is important to the community, to the animals we help, to the people who volunteer." David turned his attention to Sofia, studying her with cool assessment. "Miss Delgado, I understand your attachment to this ... project, but surely you can see that what I'm offering would allow you to pursue your work on a much larger scale, somewhere better suited to your needs." "There is nowhere better suited," Sofia replied firmly. "This land, this home, it's perfect for what we're doing." Rebecca, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "Daddy needs this property for his development," she said, her voice sharp with impatience. "The other landowners have already agreed to sell. You're the only holdout, Grayson." A sudden understanding dawned on Sofia. "The other landowners? You're buying up the whole area?" David smiled thinly. "I'm creating an exclusive community, luxury, homes, a golf course, private amenities, the kind of development this area needs to grow and prosper." "By replacing working farms with mansions for the wealthy?" Grayson asked, his voice tight with anger. "That's not growth, David. It's erasure. It's progress," David countered. "And it's happening with or without your participation. But without your land, the project will have to be reconfigured in ways that might impact your ... sanctuary." The way he said the word made it clear what he thought of their work. Sofia recognized the threat for what it was. "You're saying you'll build around us in a way that makes it difficult for us to operate." "I'm saying that progress has consequences for those who stand in its way," David replied smoothly. Grayson took a step forward, his expression hardening. "Is that why you tried to pressure the bank into foreclosing on my loan, so you could buy the property at auction?" Eleanor had the grace to look uncomfortable, but David merely shrugged. "Business is business, Grayson, nothing personal." "It feels pretty personal from where I'm standing," Grayson said coldly. Rebecca moved to her father's side. "Be reasonable, Grayson. You can't possibly think this is a good idea, turning your family's legacy into a home for strays." She glanced dismissively at Sofia of all kinds. The insult hung in the air for a moment before Grayson spoke, his voice deadly quiet. "I think you should leave now." "Don't be hasty," David began, but Grayson cut him off. "My answer is no. Final, an absolute no. This farm is not for sale, not to you, not to anyone. This is our home, and we're not going anywhere." The certainty in his voice, the way he included Sofia without hesitation in that hour, made her heart swell with love and pride. David's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, Grayson. One you'll regret." "The only thing I'd regret," Grayson replied evenly, "is betraying what matters most to me for money I don't need." After the Winters left, Sofia and Grayson stood in silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. "Do you think they'll really try to cause problems for the sanctuary?" Sofia asked finally. Grayson wrapped his arms around her. "Probably, but we'll deal with whatever comes our way." He kissed the top of her head. Together, Sofia leaned into his embrace, drawing strength from his steadiness. "I'm sorry my broken-down van brought all this trouble into your life." Grayson chuckled, the sound rumbling in his chest beneath her ear. "Your broken-down van brought the best thing that ever happened to me." He tilted her chin up so she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "I wouldn't change a single moment, Sofia, not one." The winter passed in a blur of activity. Despite David Winter's veiled threats, the sanctuary project moved forward. The first phase of renovations was completed just after the new year, allowing them to take in more animals in need. Their first major success story came in February, when a local news station ran a feature on their rehabilitation of a severely neglected horse that had been rescued from an abandoned property. The story generated donations and more volunteer support, giving their fledgling sanctuary the boost it needed. As predicted, David Winters began his development on the surrounding properties, but the publicity from the news story made it difficult for him to overtly target Sunfield Acres. Still, there were challenges: construction noise that spooked the animals, sudden inspections from county officials that seemed suspiciously timed. Rumors spread in town questioning their financial stability. Through it all, Sofia and Grayson remained united, facing each obstacle together. And to Sofia's surprise, the community rallied around them. Neighbors showed up to help when a sudden storm damaged one of the new enclosures. The local veterinarian offered discounted services. Even the feed store owner extended their credit when cash was tight between grant payments. "It's like they've adopted us," Sophia remarked one evening as they sorted through cards and letters of support that had arrived after another attempted inspection. "More like you've adopted them," Grayson replied with a smile. "You have a way of making people feel like they're part of something important. It's one of the many reasons I love you." As winter mellowed into spring, wedding preparations took center stage. Linda and the shelter volunteers threw Sophia a surprise bridal shower, gifting her with handmade items for the farmhouse and sharing stories that made her laugh until she cried. "I never thought I'd have this," Sophia confessed to Linda afterward, looking around at the women who had become her friends. "People who care about me, a place where I belong." Linda squeezed her hand. "You created it, honey, by being exactly who you are." The week before the wedding, as Sophia was going through her closet deciding what to pack for their brief honeymoon, she came across her old backpack, the one she'd carried with her during her years on the road. Curious, she opened it and found her most precious possessions still inside. A faded photograph of herself as a child with a kind-faced foster mother whose name she could no longer remember. A small carved wooden dog that a shelter volunteer who had given her on her 18th birthday. A journal filled with notes about the animals she'd rescued over the years. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, turning the pages of the journal slowly. Each entry represented an animal she had helped, a life she had touched. Some had happy endings, adoptions, sanctuaries, forever homes. Others were harder animals too ill or injured to save. Moments of heartbreak on the long road that had led her here. "Hey," Grayson said softly from the doorway. "Everything okay?" Sophia looked up, smiling through sudden tears. Just remembering, Grayson came to sit beside her, his arms sliding around her shoulders as he looked down at the journal. "That's a lot of lives you've saved." "Not all of them," Sophia said, her finger resting on an entry about a puppy who hadn't survived despite her best efforts. "But you tried," Grayson said gently. "That's what matters. You saw them when no one else did. You cared when no one else would." Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder. "I used to think I was meant to be alone, that loving anything or anyone too much would just lead to pain when I inevitably had to leave. And now?" Grayson asked, his voice soft in her ear. Sophia closed the journal and set it aside. "Now I know that love isn't something you can run out of. The more you give, the more you have." The day of the wedding dawned clear and perfect, with spring flowers blooming across the fields and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of new beginnings. In keeping with their simple lifestyle, Sophia and Grayson had opted for a ceremony in the meadow beside the farmhouse, followed by a reception in the barn, which volunteers had transformed with white lights and wildflower arrangements. Sophia got ready in their bedroom, with Linda's help, choosing a simple white dress that fell to her ankles in soft layers. Her dark hair was pinned up with sprigs of baby's breath, and she wore the pearl earrings that had been Grayson's mother's sent from Florida with a warm note welcoming Sophia to the family. "You look beautiful," Linda said, stepping back to admire her work. "Grayson won't know what hit him." Sophia smiled, feeling a surprising calm despite the importance of the day. "Is everyone here?" "The meadow's filling up," Linda confirmed. "Mike's family, the shelter staff, volunteers, neighbors, even Margaret Mitchell came. Oh, and there's someone special waiting downstairs to see you before the ceremony." Curious, Sophia followed Linda down to the living room where a familiar figure waited. "Duke," Sophia exclaimed, dropping to her knees to greet the German shepherd who was wearing a bow tie attached to his collar. "He's the ring bearer," explained the young woman holding his Leshemle, Margaret's niece. "He's been practicing all week." Sophia hugged the dog, remembering the frightened animal who had cowered behind hay bales just months ago. Now he stood, tall and confident, his eyes bright with intelligence and trust. "Thank you for bringing him," Sophia said, rising to her feet. "It means a lot to have him here." As Emily led Duke outside to prepare for the ceremony, Sophia took a moment alone in the living room. She thought of how far she had come from the day her van had broken down on the road outside, not just in time, but in her heart's journey, from fear to trust, from running to staying, from loneliness to love. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mike stood there in a neat suit, looking uncomfortable but proud. "Ready?" he asked. "Grayson's waiting out there, looking like he might pass out from happiness." Sophia took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm ready." Mike offered his arm. He had agreed to walk her down the aisle when Sophia mentioned she had no family to fill that role. "You've got quite a crowd out there," he told her as they crossed the yard toward the meadow. "Seems like half the town showed up." Sophia wasn't surprised. In the months since she'd decided to stay, Sunfield Acres had become more than just a farm or a sanctuary. It had become a gathering place, a community center of sorts, where people came to volunteer, to learn, to connect with the animals and with each other as they reached the edge of the meadow. Sophia saw the crowd gathered in a semicircle around a simple wooden arch covered in spring flowers. Linda stood to one side with the other bridesmaids, women from the shelter and volunteers who had become friends. On the other side were Grayson's groomsman Mike's son and farmers from neighboring properties. And in the center, waiting beneath the arch, was Grayson. He wore a dark suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. But it was his expression when he saw her that Sophia would remember for the rest of her life, a look of such pure joy and love that it took her breath away. The simple ceremony passed in a blur of emotion. They had written their own vows, spoken from the heart without fancy words or elaborate promises, just honest commitments to love and support each other through whatever life brought their way. When Grayson slipped the wedding band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, his eyes never leaving hers. "I love you," he whispered, words meant only for her despite the crowd around them. "I love you too," she whispered back, "always." The reception in the barn was everything Sophia could have wished for: warm, joyful, filled with laughter and good food prepared by neighbors, music played by a local band, dancing that lasted well into the evening. As darkness fell, fairy lights twinkled from the rafters, and Sophia found herself surrounded by people who had become her family in the truest sense of the word. Linda and the shelter staff who had welcomed her into their work, Mike and his family who had become regular visitors to the farm, Margaret Mitchell and her niece Emily, who had helped secure their future, the volunteers who gave their time and energy to the sanctuary, even some of the first families who had adopted animals Sophia had rehabilitated. "Happy?" Grayson asked, finding her at the edge of the dance floor, where she had paused to take it all in. Sophia turned to her husband, and smiled. "More than I ever thought possible." Grayson pulled her close, swaying gently to the music. "You know what I was thinking earlier, watching you walk toward me?" "What?" Sophia asked, looking up into his eyes. "That sometimes the best things in life come from broken-down vans and barefoot women with too many animals." Sophia laughed, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "And sometimes," she whispered against his lips, "they come from farmers with storm-gray eyes who know how to wait for a heart that's afraid to stay still." Later that night, after the guests had gone and the farm was quiet again, Sophia and Grayson stood on the porch of their home, looking out at the sanctuary they had built together. The spring night was mild, scented with apple blossoms and new grass. In the barn, the rescued animals slept peacefully. In the paddock, the horses dozed under the stars. And in the driveway, Sophia's van sat beside Grayson's truck, no longer an escape route, but a reminder of the journey that had brought her home. "So," Grayson said, his arm around her waist, "Mrs. Hale, what's next?" Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder, thinking of all they had accomplished and all that still lay ahead: the sanctuary expansion, the educational programs they wanted to develop, the family they hoped to build someday. "Everything," she said simply. "Everything is next." And in that moment, standing with the man who had taught her heart to be still, Sophia knew that she had found what she had been searching for all along: not just a place to belong, but a love worth staying for. A love that had room for all her strays, all her broken pieces, all her dreams. A love that felt, at last, like home. The end.